Hello everyone, my name is Anitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I am going to be covering the Millenniummon Turbo deck that you may have seen in one of my gameplay videos. Like in the title of the deck, the whole idea is to try to get to Millenniummon as quickly as possible, so that way he could not only start wrecking the opponent's security, but also their field with his removal effect, and be a very hard threat to remove because of his own innate ability to revive himself. He is just a very, very powerful card, and as such, he's going to be the sole focus on the deck, and I actually based this deck off of the Omnimon Turbo deck that I made a while back. Going over the deck, I am going to be running 4 copies of Kapurimon, because Kapurimon is just the best black Digitama, and even though his ability doesn't necessarily happen all the time, when it does happen, it's still pretty nice. So what his ability is he gives the inheritable ability during your turn. When this Digimon has reboot, this Digimon gains plus 1000 DP. So plus 1000 DP is pretty nice to have when you're attacking into your opponent's security or into their Digimon. And then the other Digitama I'm going to be running is 1 copy of Tsumemon. So Tsumemon is in here just because he's the 5th Digitama. You're almost never going to use his ability, so it doesn't necessarily matter, but it could come up every now and then, where if you have a Digimon with the same name as this Digimon on your field, this Digimon gets plus 2000 DP. So it's nice when it happens, but for the most part, it just is there to be another Digitama. Next, on to the rookies. I'm running 4 copies of Agumon. So Agumon is just your value vanilla, where he's just very efficient to play. 0 to evolve, 2 to play. That's kind of it. He's just the value vanilla. Next, I'm running 4 copies of Gotsumon. So Gotsumon is a really interesting choice because he is a rookie blocker. So he could help stave off some early game aggression in case you are coming up against a deck that generally likes to play a little bit more on the early side. On top of which, just having another source of blocker is still really, really good. You're almost never going to attack with him, and you're most likely going to end up digivolving over him, but he's just there because he is still a decent option in terms of his utility and usability. And then the last rookie I'm going to be running is 4 copies of ToyAgumon. So ToyAgumon is the main rookie that we want to see and we want to play because he gives the inheritable ability of reboot, which is pretty good because right now our deck has some pretty good reboot synergy. On top of which, he's just another efficient Digimon to digivolve with. Next, on to the champions. I'm running 4 copies of Numemon. So the reason why I'm a little bit light on the rookies is because Numemon kind of fills in that rookie slot while being a champion at the same time. Just because he is very, very low to cost as a champion. So if we don't necessarily see our rookies and we do see a Numemon, then we're still in a relatively decent spot. On top of which, him being a champion also means he has a very low and efficient evolve cost. So even if we do see our rookies, we still want to see Numemon because he is just a cheap and efficient card to digivolve off of. Even though he doesn't give any abilities, but he doesn't need to just to be a value card. Next, I'm running 4 copies of Greymon. So obviously we're going to be playing the Greymon line for black just because it's one of the better lines that black currently has. So Greymon is just your fairly average champion, and he gives this nice inheritable ability where if your Digimon has reboot, it also gets jamming. So pair that up with the whole Greymon line, and it just is some very powerful synergy. And then the last champion I'm going to be running is 4 copies of Guardromon. So Guardromon is just your big champion blocker, so similar to how Gatsuman is also trying to stave off some early game aggression, Guardromon is doing another very similar thing on a different level, except the only problem with Guardromon is you can't attack, but you could let him sit on the board, digivolve into him, and then use whatever you digivolve into to attack with. So it's not like him not being able to attack is that big of a deal, but he's just, again, there to help stave off early aggression. Next, I'm running 4 copies of HiAndromon. So HiAndromon is just another Digimon to digivolve with. out of the current options that we have, he is just slightly better than the vanillas, just because he does have that blocker keyword. And we are running cards like ToyAgumon to give reboot, so he could end up being a blocker reboot, which is still relatively decent. But given the lack of options in the ultimate slot, HiAndromon is just one of the current better ones in the game. And then the last ultimate that we're going to be running is MetalGreymon, because MetalGreymon is just the next Digimon in the Greymon line. So he has reboot himself, so he gets all of the reboot synergies if you're building him up. So he will get the jamming off of Greymon, and he will get the plus 1000 DP off of Kapurimon. So, like, he's just still a very, very decent card to run, on top of which he gives the inheritable ability. If the Digimon has reboot, then it also gets security attack +1, which security attack +1 is a pretty big deal because it allows you to deal a lot of extra potential damage. Next, on to our Mega slot. I'm running 2 copies of HiAndromon because HiAndromon is just our value vanilla in the Mega slot because he is relatively cheap to Digivolve into. And then, on top of which, you could still stack all of the other abilities off of the Greymon line for him. And even if you don't stack all of the abilities on him, we still are using him as fodder to Digivolve into Millenniummon with, so it's not like his abilities really matter that much, but it is nice to get them when you get them. But if you don't, it's nothing to cry over, because he's just a stepping stone for Millenniummon. Next, I'm running 4 copies of WarGreymon, because WarGreymon is just one of the better black megas currently in the game. Having blocker and reboot innately is already very, very powerful. On top of any of the other synergies that we're able to stack on top of him, could make him for a really big threat. And then lastly, I'm running 4 copies of the star of the show, Millenniummon. So Millenniummon has 2 really, really powerful abilities. His first ability is when you Digivolve into him, you get to return one of your opponent's Digimon to the bottom of their deck, and then you basically remove all of their Digivolution sources. So that's just really, really good removal because it puts it to the bottom of the deck, so that way decks like Purple can't necessarily bring it out of the trash, and there's no efficient ways to search for that exact card. So if it's a card that they're not playing a whole lot of, then there's a high chance they're just not going to see it again for the rest of the game. So Millenniummon's removal is already pretty solid, of a reason why we want to run him, on top of which he even has a second ability where he has a Wind Destroyed ability. If this Digimon has any Digivolution sources, you may play Millenniummon from your trash without paying its cost. So he basically has a self-reviving ability. Yeah, it technically only happens once, but we only need it once because he's already going to be very, very hard for the opponent to deal with, having slightly above average DP, and having that removal option just is super, super good and why we want to play him. On top of which, if you stack him up with all of the reboot synergy cards, then he could still potentially do some quite devastating damage. In terms of our option cards, I am choosing to run only 4 Atomic Rays. So Black doesn't really have that great of options, and I don't necessarily think de-Digivolve is currently really worth doing because the opponent is still keeping a Digimon on the field with de-Digivolve, and it's not really acting as efficient enough removal. So I just decided that removing the removal is probably the best, and Atomic Ray, both of its abilities are just really, really good. So its main ability is one of your Digimon with blocker becomes active, so obviously making a Digimon become active means you could swing with it again for more potential damage. A fully built up WarGreymon could do some very, very devastating damage with Atomic Ray. And then its security ability is also really, really good because what it does is all of your Digimon with blocker become active and get plus 5000 DP until the end of the turn. So we have a blocker on basically every single level. So this ability could be really, really strong, especially if you run out of blockers because they already blocked and they survived. Then this card just stands up all of your blockers, and then you create this big wall that the opponent just cannot really get through. So both of the abilities are really good, and again, Black doesn't have very good options currently in the game, so this is just the best one that I could think of. And then as far as the Tamers go, I'm running 4 copies of the Black Tai Kamiya. So what Black Tai is doing is he's your memory efficiency card, where if your memory is 2 or less, it becomes 3. So that's pretty important, being at 3 memory, because it allows you to basically play WarGreymon and attack with WarGreymon. It allows you to play Millenniummon, putting your opponent at 3 in case they have a card that does something similar. Like, it's just a very, very good ability to have. On top of which, he has the other ability where during your opponent's turn, all of your black Digimon get plus 1000 DP. So just one thing to note, this does not synergize with Millenniummon because Millenniummon is white and not black, but it does synergize with basically every other card in your entire deck. And seeing how this ability does stack means having multiple Tai Kamiyas out isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, because it makes it harder for the opponent to remove all of your Digimon. And then its security effect is basically the same as all the other Tamers, where you just play it for free. So that's just still a pretty solid ability. So for the most part, this is the deck. Again, I based it off of the Millenniummon Turbo deck. I was using some relatively similar formulas that deck was kind of doing to try to build this deck, and any other level 7 deck is also going to probably be wanting to run a similar style of deck to this, where you just want to play your Digimon as efficiently as possible, so that way you could Digivolve up as quickly as possible, and then properly timing your level 7s, so that way you could use its effects in some very devastating ways. And then in terms of other options that you could possibly run for the deck, you could run Megadramon, because Megadramon is just another value vanilla card, where this time it's a card that you're not necessarily afraid to play because he does have a lower initial cost than a lot of his contemporaries in the slot, on top of which he does have some slightly higher DP, so he's still not necessarily bad to play. It's just I didn't really see a reason why personally, because the evolve cost is the same as all of the others currently. Then you could play Keramon, the promo Keramon, because he has this inheritable ability where the Digimon gets plus 1000 DP on the opponent's turn. So that could potentially be used to help buff Millenniummon, so that way it could put him out of some specific damage ranges. And then if you just want more blockers in the deck, you could run Chrysalimon. So this is just another basic blocker for black. Like, it's not really doing anything too special. I just found Guardromon to be doing basically the same thing but better, even though this one can attack, but its on-attack skill is just not very good, so there's no reason to attack. So Guardromon's just a better option in my opinion, but if you wanted more blockers, then here's another one. And then you could run Infernmon, because Infernmon has a when played, you get to de-Digivolve 1. I don't particularly think this card is good, but just having that flexibility in terms of options, where you could either Digivolve into it or play it from your hand, and you don't feel bad about either, is still really good. Then in terms of other options you could play Spider Shot, where you basically just get to de-Digivolve your opponent's Digimon by 1. I don't find this mechanic to be super good right now. It's probably going to get better later on in the game, but currently I just don't think it's doing enough, because a Digimon is still going to be on the field, and that is the problem with the mechanic, where it's trying to remove it, but it's not fully removing it. It's just weakening it. And then its security ability is activating its main, so it's not like it's a bad card, it's just I don't personally find de-Digivolve very useful right now. But if you do find de-Digivolve very useful right now, Giga Cannon is still a very, very powerful card, where you just get to de-Digivolve the opponent's Digimon by 4, which basically reverts them all the way down to their rookie stage. So, like, there's some interesting things that you could do with de-Digivolving. Again, I just find the problem with the mechanic is the fact that the Digimon stays on the field, so that way it could be used as an attacker. But if you're looking to use more of this mechanic, then Giga Cannon is still a very good card to play. And then if you wanted to play a cheaper option, Lightning Blade is a pretty good cheap option, where you get to buff one of your Digimon by 3000 DP, so that's still pretty good. And then its security ability is making one of your Digimon with blocker active, which again, we're running a decent amount of blockers and there's at least one in each stage. So you're always going to have the ability to have a blocker on the field. So having an extra blocker or an extra block because of Lightning Blade is still pretty good. But yeah, that's kind of it for the deck. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts about the deck down in the comments below, and feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I will see you in the next video.